Hey everyone, George Jackson here, music director of the Amarillo Symphony. Now I want to talk to you about this incredible work, Gustav Mahler's Fifth Symphony, and most importantly, why you should all come and hear the Amarillo Symphony perform this work February the 23rd and 24th at the Globe News Centre. This really is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to hear one of the most exciting, challenging, and to some extent uplifting symphonies of the entire repertoire. Now I just wanted to introduce you a little bit to this piece, just to give you a sense of what's in store, and again, to make sure that nobody misses the chance to hear one of the greatest works. Now, Mahler's Fifth Symphony is, in a way, his return to instrumental music. His previous few symphonies were all about choruses, texts, soloists, and this represents something a little bit different, where there's no choir, there's no singers, it's just the orchestra, and it is an enormous orchestra. I'm going to read you out some of the list of what you're going to expect to see on stage. 4 flutes, 2 of which play the piccolo, 3 oboes, 3 clarinets, 2 bassoons and a double bassoon, 6 horns. I mean, that's something. 4 trumpets, 3 trombones, tuba, timpani, lots and lots of percussion, strings. The point is, it's going to be loud and it's going to raise the roof of our wonderful Globe News Centre. Now, again, we've talked a lot in previous symphonies about this idea of darkness moving to light. And with Mahler's Fifth Symphony, we witnessed that exact process. This symphony comes from the early 20th century, 1901, 1902, and Mahler had actually encountered death very closely in 1901. He'd suffered a hemorrhage, and apparently the doctor said that he was within an hour of dying. And so at this point, he'd experienced this close call with death. And so how else do you begin a symphony but you use a funeral march? And this first movement begins in a very dramatic way with a funeral march and a beautiful and frankly terrifying trumpet solo, which I'm going to quickly just play the beginning of now. Amazing start. So we've had this funeral march. This is a 5-movement symphony, and we get to a second movement which is fast in contrast to the slower walking pace funeral march that we've had. But in a way it relates to the funeral theme, because he almost describes what hell might be like. Very aggressive writing for the orchestra. You'll hear a lot of the time the brass are instructed to use mutes, which they'll put into the bell of the instrument to create a kind of dissonant, quite dirty and aggressive sound, very unique sound. And so we get this kind of, almost this image of hell after the funeral march. And that sounds like this. Pretty dramatic and incredible writing for the orchestra. Within this particular movement, like in the first movement, there's also a kind of a lullaby theme that you'll hear. And so this is something very typical in Mahler, that you contrast this extreme drama and extreme kind of outpouring of emotion with something very intimate and something very childlike, which is a very important part of the way that Mahler thinks about the world. The third movement, I mean, we could spend hours talking about this symphony, but I promise you this will be as brief as I can make it. The third movement is a scherzo, and actually, in that sense, it's a horn concerto, because Mahler decides to give the first horn, the principal horn, the opportunity to basically be the soloist in this piece. And I think that there's something about this inner movement, this third movement, that it's fun. So it's a scherzo, which basically means to laugh, to joke. But also, what's important is that there's all this beautiful Viennese charm that we associate so much with Mahler. So really, we're in a waltz. Think of the big, majestic ballrooms of the 19th century. But also these very intimate Austrian country tunes called the Ländler. And you'll hear these beautiful little arrangements of these kinds of dances. And I think, again, I'm sure that this symphony has a real biographical element to it, but this is Mahler's way of, finding the fun and finding the joy of life, having gone through this tough, close experience with death. And to continue the biography of this symphony, through this scherzo movement and through the romance of it, we will move on to a movement that actually connects very much to the fact that just before this symphony, he both met and married his wife, Alma. Here's the beginning of the scherzo, and again, it's a real exciting feat of horn writing, not to be missed. So think Sound of Music, think a beautiful time in the Austrian Alps, and that's the sort of thing that Mahler's going for in this scherzo. Now, we go on, as I said, to this very romantic movement, which really is a love letter to Alma Mahler, Alma Schindler, who becomes Alma Mahler, his wife. And if you were at the CMA concert in January, we performed this adagietto on its own, this fourth movement, and you'll hear this combination of harp and beautiful string writing, which after the kind of drama of the first three movements, suddenly we're in this very intimate, romantic world where he's, in a way, penning this love letter to his new wife. This proceeds directly on into the final movement, the fifth movement, which I think can only really be described as the kind of ultimate expression of joy. It starts with this almost portrait of life in the mountains. Don't forget that Mahler spent his summers and at the same time wrote most of his music out in the countryside. And so a lot of these aspects of the countryside represent for him this very happy time in his existence where he, with his new wife, he can kind of enjoy the beauty of the Austrian countryside. Now, one of the things I love about this last movement is that it's so full of joy. In a way, it's got such a simple aspect to it. But at the same time, you'll hear the sort of yodeling of the hills and the mountains. This is the beginning. And you get these little rhapsodic solos in the winds, which really do make you feel like you're calling to each other across the mountains. And after seemingly being a bit lost on the hillside walk, he finds this incredible theme, which is just about joy, having fun, celebration of life, all of the things which I think make this symphony so special. And again, I can only say it enough. This is such a unique chance to come and hear this symphony in the Globe News Centre. So please do come and join us. Thank you very much.